blessing for studying Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher
Kishanu b'mitzvotav
tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who's made us holy with your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. So, that's going to bring up the sheet. One second. All right, here we go. Phil, would you read our first act, please?
Okay. The Gemara relates. Rabbi Akiba was the shepherd of Ben Kalbas Savua, one of the wealthy residents of Jerusalem. The daughter of Ben Kalbas Savua, Rachel, saw that he was humble and refined. She said to him, "If I betroth myself to you, will you go to the study hall to learn Torah?" He said to her, "Yes." She became betrothed to him privately and sent him off to study. Her father heard this and became angry. He removed her from his house and took a vow prohibiting her from benefiting from his property. Context. This is from the Babylonian Talmud, Masechet, Tractate Ketubot, which is about ketubas and what responsibilities spouses have toward each other. The Mishnah Ketubat 5:6 states that how often husbands must make sure to engage in marital relations. States how often. Answer, it depends on their occupation and how long they are away from home earning a living. The Gemara discusses this and gives cautionary tales of what happens when rabbis are away from their spouses for too long. This leads to the story of Rabbi Akiba.
Okay, and our first question.
One. Oh, it disappeared on my screen. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'll read the question for you. At what points could this story have turned out differently? So here's our story. When could somebody have made it different? Go ahead.
Rachel may not have viewed him as being humble and refined and worthy of investing in him.
Why did Rachel send him off? Why did Rachel betroth him privately? What was it all about? Why couldn't she just tell her father?
She probably knew what he would say.
Were not customs different at that time, the way marriages were arranged? Or contracted? You have how they were agreed upon? That's a question for you, David, because I'm not familiar.
Yes.
I think that's the heart of the matter.
Go ahead, Phil.
I was saying, I think that is the heart of the matter, just what everyone has identified. I don't know what the privately is. That is, I don't know what that translates, but I thought that would be contrary to the rule of getting your fathers, usually your fathers.
Yes, and a lot of chutzpah to do that, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, even my sons-in-law, one of them at least, came and asked me before he even today. So to a certain point, that's a custom that still continues.
The father here did not get his bride price. So he lost out on that.
I have a question, David. Is either the consent of the father and the bride price actually halachically necessary for the marriage to occur? Are either of those two things in some form actually halachically required, especially at this time period?
No.
No? Hmm.
No, that the fact that they're not halachically required is why people who do mock weddings in Hebrew schools have to be careful, because if you do it too well, then the kids are legally married according to Jewish law, and then you have to get a legal divorce for them so they can actually marry people when they grow up.
Oh, interesting. Well, then it seems to be, I guess, maybe a social thing related between, I guess, the authority of the father over his child. In this case, what would be his daughter. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe that would explain the in secret part. Because maybe they want to circumvent the whole issue socially, and I guess maybe they technically can, so they figure why not? Because they can. Maybe is what's going on here.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So besides the daughter deciding that Akiba was humble and refined, well, what other points could this story have been changed?
He could have said no, he wasn't going to go and study.
There's also the question of the vow, but I guess that involves whether a later part of the story could be changed, because taking a vow is such a serious matter, and it's very difficult to cancel it.
Yes. Yes, I received a comment as well that Akiba or Rachel could have gone to Kalba Savua and approached him. All right. So why might Kalba Savua have disowned his daughter?
Could you repeat that, David? I didn't hear.
Why might Ben Kalba Savua have disowned his daughter?
He might have felt that she went behind his back.
Yeah. Maybe he didn't think this man was worthy of her or his household.
That's what I was just going to say. Maybe he didn't have he wasn't involved in the choice of his daughter's betrothal.
And perhaps he found that dishonoring, maybe, to his lineage or to his household as a result.
He was humiliated, maybe.
Yeah, that, especially given the context of a generally patriarchal or somewhat patriarchal society in the first century, I would assume.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the fact that he couldn't support her, saying, hey, he's not going to support her, why should I?
Well, he might even consider with this man that Akiba, will he be is he wise? Question his motives as well, if then he might be able to benefit from the father's wealth at some time in the future.
Well, they would have to be if he Akiba, because otherwise, how is he supposed to survive? So I presume he thought that perhaps that she would renege and say, I can't marry you, I'm sorry. Because of economic reasons.
Right. And something that I'm just noticing, and I've seen this text before, but what I'm realizing now as I look at it further is that Rachel gets removed from her father's house after she's already sent off Akiba.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think I had always assumed that they got married. Dad was like, okay, well, fine. You didn't show me kavod. You didn't show me respect. I'm disowning both of you. And then she says to Akiba, go study. But it looks like actually he's already been sent off to study. And then her father's saying, you're not getting any benefit from my property. You don't get upkeep now. You don't get inheritance later.
So where did she go? He just threw her out in the street?
Basically.
Speaking about showing love,
Yeah, right.
is that, tough love, as some folks would say in the more recent.
I have a question, just a factual question, perhaps. If he was the shepherd, as we're told, then I don't see how he was supposed to be supported when he went off to study if he wasn't working as a shepherd, if he had no other income, and if his betrothed's father was not going to support him for his own honor or glory or whatever it would be. So I wonder how that's supposed to be, or is that understood somehow in the Gemara, how that would work?
So the text doesn't say. I have heard elsewhere that he was put in charge of distributing tzedakah basically from the study house, and that job came with a small stipend once it was realized that he had no other way to acquire food or pay for lodging. But as stories go, this story in its own unit leaves out that detail. And it's a good question. You're thinking like a Talmudic scholar.
Do we know anything about Ben Kalba Savua? What kind of person he was before this act?
There,
rich.
Yeah, there's a little bit about him in other places in the Talmud, most of which just talks about how rich he was. But I will see if I can find more information about it and put that in my follow-up email.
Okay.
And when they say that that Ben Kalba Savua took a vow, that's a vow to God.
Yeah.
Okay. And we know from other stories what that has meant.
Yes. For instance, as far as going so far as the as Yiftach, as Jephthah, who took a vow to sacrifice to God the first thing that came out to greet him, and that ended up being his daughter. So yes, vows were taken extremely seriously, which actually is anchored in this week's Torah reading, Matot Maseh, where it talks about vows and how they get annulled. Yes, it is also possible, as someone just mentioned in the chat to me, that when Rachel, quote, sent him off to study, that maybe this involved being sent off with some food or some money or something that was hers or she acquired. All right, speaking of Rachel, why might she have been willing to give up the money from living in her father's house?
Maybe she wanted to get away from her father. Maybe she wanted more independence.
Maybe it was the kind of man her father was. I mean, she was so taken with the fact that Rabbi Akiva was humble and refined. Maybe that's in contrast to her father. And this is a very angry man who probably wanted a wealthy son-in-law.
Maybe she had a trust fund.
Perhaps she preferred to support a great scholar rather than whatever other kind of suitor that potentially could have been given that. It was mentioned that Ben Kalba Savua was rich. Maybe she preferred to support a scholar rather than do any kind of, I guess, relationship with someone who would be part of the aristocracy or nobility at the time period.
David, can you repeat or show the question?
Yeah, sorry, that was a little fast. There's the question. Why was Rachel willing to give up the money?
Was she willing to give up the money?
Why?
Was she willing?
Was
You
she
said,
willing?
why was she willing? And I'm asking, was she willing? She was infatuated with Akiva. She sent him off to learn and do good things, pissed off her father, who got angry with her and cut her off. Maybe she didn't anticipate it. I mean, the question is kind of saying she would have anticipated her father doing this and she didn't care. And I'm wondering whether she did anticipate it. As a matter of fact, I'm saying I don't think she anticipated it. And she suffered the consequence. They both suffered the consequences. All three of them suffered the consequences of Savua's rash reaction.
Yeah, but I think the question is posed to lead you to come to the conclusion to demonstrate that she actually loved Akiva, and more the demonstration of love compared to preferring the money over her love. But I think that's almost structured as something as that someone wants you to come to that conclusion, rather than, because you're right, that it's not clear that she was willing to give up the money. It doesn't say that here at all.
Maybe there was wealthy family that supported her or could support her. That doesn't mention a mother or what the situation is there. If she had a mother to help her in any way. Maybe they felt love conquers all, and her values were more that the love was more important than the money, and somehow they would survive.
Either the love or the love for studying Torah. Because she sent them off with this for a specific purpose. She didn't say, I'm going to love you just because you're you. I will if you go to study.
If he became a rabbi and had been a shepherd, as a rabbi, he might have a better opportunity to earn a living and create a family that way. She wouldn't need her father's money.
Oh, maybe she wanted to live a different type of a life with a different type of a man who wasn't necessarily focused on purely commercial or monetary gain. She was looking for someone who was spiritual and humble and refined. Because clearly my wife said, oh, it's one of the things I liked about you when I first met you, because you had glasses and you appeared to be a little bit more intellectual. But I think she may have had certain illusions, because I think I can't translate exactly from Spanish, but she said, well, it may have been an illusion that I relieved her of that. I'm not I like to read, but I'm certainly no intellectual. But I'm just saying that that may have been what Rachel's preference was, and the type of person with whom she wanted to live her life.
But she also wanted him to study, Charles. She didn't want him to.
Well, exactly. That's just
Right,
exactly
yes,
as one of the I'm saying is one of the characteristics, and she conditioned.
definitely.
So no, I agree. That's what I'm trying to emphasize.
Right, yes. He had everything else and she wanted him to have that one other component.
Hmm.
I thought women couldn't inherit their father's property or money back then, David. Only boys could.
Aha, so you raise a good point. There are different ways of thinking about this. One is that in last week's Parsha, Pinchas, we learn about a case of the daughters of Tzlopchad, where if a man dies and he has no sons, then the daughters get to inherit. And that actually comes up again in this coming week's Parsha. They basically do a trailer bill where they have to fix an unintended consequence of that having to do with land getting transferred out of one tribe's property into another tribe's property. So they said, okay, women can inherit, but they have to marry within their own tribe. So that's one way of looking at this. The other is to say that it's possible that this vow prohibiting her from benefiting from his property is not a disinheritance, but simply I'm not going to support you while your husband is away studying. So she's not benefiting from his property while he's still alive.
Okay.
We don't know anything about him having a son, to my knowledge. So it could be either or both components.
Maybe we don't know the extent of the vow he took about her benefiting from his property. He may have included that she won't get the inheritance.
That's true. All right. Question 4. Why might Rachel have sent Akiba off to study?
What I had said was he had all these other fine qualities, but she wanted to add that to make sure she saw potential in him.
Or she loved him, but she wanted him to have something to contribute, not just being humble and refined, but also having knowledge, and she didn't have wealth.
We don't know how long he was gone. This may have been a test in some way to see for herself how long she would be able to sustain her feelings for him and see if really she could marry him. And the distance and time that he was gone may have affected his feelings as well. So this could have been some kind of a test as to just how legitimate and truthful and these feelings were between them. I don't know.
If I remember this story, David, isn't he going to be gone a long time?
This is an excellent time to go into Acts 2.
Yeah.
I think I heard 40 years at one point.
Yeah.
Well, I think 40 comes up because he was supposedly 40 years old when Act 1 takes place.
Oh.
Which puts a whole different spin on the idea of go and study. If he's like already 40.
Old.
All right. Alan, would you please read Act 2?
Hey,
Yeah, 12 years.
Rabbi Akiva went and sat for 12 years in the study hall. When he came back to his house, he brought 12,000 students with him. And as he approached, he heard an old man saying to his wife, "For how long will you lead the life of a widow of a living man, living alone while your husband is in another place?" She said to him, "If he would listen to me, he would sit and study for another 12 years. When Rabbi Akiva heard this, he said, "I have permission to do this." He went back and sat for another 12 years in the study hall.
Alan, didn't we read this story in another class at one time?
Yeah, I'm sure we did.
Yeah, because I remember that he was gone for a very long time.
Yeah. So
All right.
he
Yeah.
was 40 when he went off.
Mhm.
He's now 60, or he will be 64 when he comes back the second time.
Yes.
He's no spring chicken. She is no longer a spring chicken.
How was he intending to feed and house 12,000 students?
Yeah, who's going to support them?
Did they ever have children?
Yes.
Well, they aren't even married yet.
They weren't married, Jim.
They were betrothed,
Oh.
but not married.
Well, but back then they didn't do that stuff.
No, they,
Well, yeah.
no, you did. The betrothal was the marriage contract, and then you got married.
If they got married.
So they're betrothed. They still, from what I can see, still have not been married.
Oh, yeah, he says the widow. That's all her a widow.
So at what points could this part of the story have turned out differently?
You could have not given him 12 more years.
You didn't hear what the old man said.
He might not have come back.
Altogether.
If she was willing to let him go and study 12 years and then let him go and return to study 12 more years, did she really love him?
Mm.
Or was she just going up against her father in the beginning?
What does living alone with your husband mean? As if, does that imply that they are married, or that this man doesn't understand that she's not married to him, she's just living as a widow because he's in her life, but he's off studying somewhere?
Well, you know, they may have married at some time while he went off to study.
There's a lot of information missing.
Yeah, seems like.
But it does say explicitly, the old man, he heard the old man saying to his wife, he means, of course, Rachel, who's now his wife.
Well, he does say wife, yes. Here
Yeah, and then, well, actually, it doesn't say that, I guess, in the Gemara. That's put in that's in the bold type, but that's the understanding. So then it says, "For how long will you lead this life? Be the widow of a living man?" I forget, what's the term for that, David? It's a person, a woman in that position.
Aguna, a chained woman.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
What kind?
And aguna, David reminds
Mhm.
us. Yeah. So like the woman whose husband has gone off to the wars and
Okay.
hasn't returned, and whether she's permitted to treat him as dead. But here, her interest seems to be totally in having him study and achieve greatness as a scholar. And it seems to be a very, she seems remorseless on this point.
But you don't know if he was permanently at a distance for 12 years, or if he would be visit sometime return and keep her company for a period of time. Well, in a sense, similar to what my situation is right now.
Based off of how the story presents itself, you seem to be a better husband than Rabbi Akiba, Charles.
No, I don't think.
Or at least in the spending time together department, you are.
Hmm.
Some old
All
man
right.
better not say anything to your wife, Charles.
I keep viewing this as like a movie,
Mhm.
and just trying to imagine a scene where there's an old man talking to Rachel, and in comes Rabbi Akiva, followed by his, or accompanied by his 12,000 students, and he just happens to overhear them. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm visualizing this, and it just
Yeah.
seems so funny.
If he expected her to make lunch for all of them, she would.
Yeah.
It's a Wagnerian opera.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Why might he have wanted to come home?
See his wife, to be done with studying.
He brought home 12,000 students for a reason.
Right.
What could have been his reason? What did he think was going to happen with those 12,000 students when he came back home? Or was that just to impress people with how many people admired him?
Maybe he was going to set up his own type of study school.
Yes, that's what I thought too. He was going to stay with his students where he lived with his wife.
He didn't expect to go back and get another 12 years.
Right.
He brought them so he could continue to learn, teach and learn.
David, is 12,000 a real number, or is it just one of those things that Talmud uses to say, to mean just a very large number?
Given that there's a preponderance of 12s in this story, I'm going to guess that it is probably a symbolic number, but nonetheless a large. You can presume he had a lot of students with him, and that number. This Rabbi Akiva comes up in Lag BaOmer as well,
Okay,
and
good.
I will have to check to see if when it talks about his students that die, if it's talking about like how many students it refers to at that point. But yes, I don't know that we can say that we should necessarily say it is exactly 12,000, but it's probably more than like 2. Like definitely many, 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 many students.
A large number, right?
Yes. All right. So if he wanted to come home for all these reasons, why might he not have bothered to say hello after coming all that way? He just turns around and goes back.
Maybe he's not as connected to her as she is to him.
Or if he was sitting and studying for 12 years, night and day, where was he going to learn social graces?
Right, that's a good point.
Oh, maybe
Right,
he's
because
showing
he was
his
a
love for his
shepherd.
wife. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, but because he was a shepherd, so like Hinda said, maybe he just doesn't have the social graces.
But it said he was refined.
Yeah. But maybe that's his way of demonstrating how much he loves his wife, that he's willing to sacrifice not being in her company for another 12 years to satisfy her desire. I'm being a little bit ironic, but we're talking about a love story, so I'm trying to find that aspect of as a motivation.
Maybe he thought if he said hello to her, he might not be, he and she might not be willing to really go for another 12 years. And that would therefore impact his future or their future.
Well, he didn't approach her, she approached him. So he may not have the same connection to her that she has to him.
Well, if it was really absent for 12 years, maybe they're unaccustomed to communicating very well.
It's very interesting that he says, I have permission. The implication, seems to me, is he didn't consider whether he had permission for the first 12 years.
That's interesting.
Rather than go and study and, check in once a month or once a week or whatever the rabbis are supposed to do, because there was that brief allusion earlier to how often people, according to their respective men, at least according to their respective occupations, should have sex with their wives. I think that was the allusion there. And here he's neglected her, and it's very satirical, and she's she has quite a tongue, and I don't blame her.
I've also received thoughts in the chat that maybe he loved God and Torah study more than he loved his wife. And maybe he felt unneeded by her comment and did feel needed by his students. So a lot of different possibilities about all of this. And you guys are doing an amazing job of looking at all the different possible angles.
Maybe after he was gone for 12 years without coming back to see her, she decided she didn't need him. They could go live another 12 years later on.
Well, I will tell you this. When we first came up from Costa Rica, I came up here first to get everything settled, because I had to find employment and get started. And so my wife was back in Costa Rica with the other children for close to 9 months. And when we finally came together, we were very happy to see each other. But I found that she had become much more independent in making decisions on her own and doing things. And I found that because I would make suggestions. She said, no, that's not how I'm going to do it. I'm accustomed to making my own decisions my own way. So there may have to, with an absence, people may change and learn how to live independently of each other. And with more experience, then you may diverge in some sense, as a perspective. Who in any relationship, there's there's more who participates in the team and makes the decisions, or what percentage, or is it equal 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever it may be, and who compromises and who doesn't, and whose perspective will hold more sway in the final decision. So, maybe after 12 years, Rachel became more independent and Akiva became more independent in their thought processes. And then you have to learn how to how to combine your, if you're going to continue to work together as a team, then you have to learn how to fit in, how to accommodate each other again. So maybe that's it. That they learned they had their own perspectives, and maybe it's time for him to go back, because they couldn't, there was that difference. They had their own way of thinking, and it was difficult for them to accommodate that easily.
Okay, Charles, would you read Act 3, please? There are 4 acts in this story. Charles, can you go ahead and read this, please?
Charles, I don't think Charles heard.
You want me to read it? Oh, I'm sorry. That's right, you did. I was thinking, when he
You're
came back.
you're into the story, Charles.
Okay, when he came back, he brought 24,000 students with him. His wife heard went out toward him to greet him. Her neighbor said, borrow some clothes and wear them, as your current apparel is not appropriate to meet an important person. She said to them, a righteous man understands the life of his beast. When she came to him, she fell on her face and kissed his feet. His attendants pushed her away, as they did not know who she was. And he said to them, leave her alone, as my Torah knowledge and yours is actually hers.
Okay. Thank you. At what points could this part of the story have turned out differently?
Well, it refers to her as his wife. So somewhere in there, they must have been married.
Yeah.
But I brought home fewer students.
And then how do you take care of so many guests that are coming? I'm not prepared. I haven't cooked anything for anybody.
Did he start a school or university or something? Because Ronnie, I hear 24,000, that's a pretty good size, like a state university or something.
Yes, he did have these students of his own that he became their teacher.
Why does she refer to her as his beast?
As a beast. That's what I was wondering.
She said it.
She referred to herself as the
Yeah, she said it, Herb. A righteous man understands the life.
Why did she say it about herself?
Yeah.
It also says something about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What does the word beast mean there? Why is she his beast? They serve him.
I'd almost think, wait a minute, who is subservient to who?
Well, he's no longer the shepherd. He is now the learned rabbi. So in a way, the roles are different than they were in the beginning, when she was the one who was telling him to go study. She seemed to be the one in charge. Now he came back recognizing that it was her that helped him do this, but he is now a learned Torah bucher, if you will, and she is no, if beast means a subservient, I hate to say animal, but person. She is now more subservient to him because he is the knowledgeable rabbi that she had hoped he would become, and that's why she sent him away.
Right, but then he recognizes precisely, and then he's in a sense treating her as an equal in that sense. It's the same knowledge. That knowledge you have is hers, because she caused him to have it. So there's a recognition there on his part of her worth to have motivated him to reach those levels.
I find it disturbing that his attendants didn't know who she was. Surely on their trek home, he said something to them about his wife. If he didn't, I'm disappointed. And they pushed her away, meaning they never really learned how to treat a wife. And that's disappointing. But the idea that he must have said something about you're going to meet a wife, and if he didn't, what was he thinking?
But think about the supposed Torah, all that they know about Torah, and they are they're looking down there at this woman. She
is showing him tremendous respect, kissing his feet.
Yes, I understand that, but it's the students that are pushing her away, rejecting her as, should I use the word repugnant? It's not as they are better than this woman there that's on the ground. That to me, at least, I know my wife would not be happy with a reaction like that.
Not very surprised with that either.
But he is giving her the credit in the end, leave her alone.
In the end, yeah, in the end.
All right, let's go on to Act 4 and finish this off.
Right.
Norma, would you read this, please?
In the meantime, her father heard that a great man came to the town. He said, I will go to him. Maybe he will nullify my vow and I will be able to support my daughter. He came to him to ask about nullifying his vow. And Rabbi Akiva said to him, did you vow thinking that this husband would become a great man? He said to him, if I had believed he would know even one chapter or even one halacha, I would not have been so harsh. He said to him, I am he. Ben Kalba Savua fell on his face and kissed his feet and gave him half of his money. The Gemara relates, Rabbi Akiva's daughter did the same thing for Ben Azai, who was also a simple person, and she caused him to learn Torah in a similar way by betrothing herself to him and sending him off to study. This explains the folk saying that people say the you follows the you, the daughter's actions are the same as her mother's. Wait, so they did have a child.
Yes.
And is this the end justifies the means? Is that what this is the moral of this story? Rabbi Akiva is ruling in accordance with Mishnah Nedarim 9:2, when Rabbi Eliezer says that new developments in a situation can lead to the annulment of a vow. So that seems to be more important here, the annulment of a vow.
But he didn't give the money to his daughter. He gave it to his daughter's husband, which
Rabbi
isn't quite the
Akiva.
same thing.
Also, when Ben Kalbasua fell on his face and kissed his feet, nobody pushed him away.
Ah, it's interesting.
Yes. But clearly that answers the question. If they weren't married, how did they have a daughter and when, if he was away for 24 years?
So maybe as someone suggested, he did come home occasionally.
She went to visit him.
Or at age 60 something, they had a kid.